Is the 4-year crypto cycle a myth? The answer is kinda maybe, and at the end of the video, if you watch the whole thing, it's going to be up to you to decide for yourself what you think about the current cycle that we're in. Is it still a perfect 4-year cycle? And if you're new here, if you're brand new to crypto, if you don't already know, crypto cycles happen in these 4-year increments. A lot of people suspect that it has to do with the Bitcoin halving. Basically, this event in the Bitcoin code that happens every 4 years, that it's a supply shock. It lowers the inflation rate of Bitcoin, so Bitcoin inflates less and less. But the point that I want to make in this video is that we need to be careful about getting too wrapped up in this idea. For example, something I hear being thrown around in the crypto ecosystem is that Bitcoin pumps 200 days after the halving. Now, that might be true in this current time and place that we are at, in this current cycle. Bitcoin's on its 4th cycle. All right, cryptocurrency as a whole, it's been out since 2009. Okay, so Bitcoin's 15 years old. The crypto industry is starting to mature. And when you think about things logically, right, when you think about it logically, every cycle has diminishing returns in terms of amplitude, right? That means the amount that Bitcoin pumps, it pumped really hard in the early days because it had lower liquidity. It's an easier object to move. But as it gets more mature, as there's more and more liquidity and more people on board, every cycle has diminishing returns in terms of price action, in terms of multiples of ROI. So, first cycle might have done 1,000x, then the next cycle might have done 100x, and then, a 20x, and then maybe a 5x. So where are we at right now? Logically speaking, this is what Benjamin Cohen used to talk about last cycle, but was proven wrong. But his logic was, I believe, on the right track. Okay, his logic was that we should theoretically have lengthening cycles over time, because with diminishing amplitude and taking longer and longer to get people in each time, theoretically it should balloon out like a jellyfish, right? Where the time between cycles takes longer and the returns that you get diminishes as crypto gets more mature because you're no longer an early adopter anymore. But strangely enough, up until now, every 4-year cycle in Bitcoin's history has played out like clockwork. And why do people care so much about this? Well, we're human beings, right? We look to the past to predict the future. We like certainty, when the harsh reality is that the only thing certain in crypto is uncertainty, and the only constant is change. All right, so we're never going to get a full grasp and be able to say what's absolutely going on, but I want to show you guys the actual history. But I want you guys to look at the chart and look at the actual facts of the amount of time it took after each Bitcoin halving for Bitcoin to pump. And what you'll find, if you stay with me and watch this whole thing, you find it actually is taking longer for Bitcoin to pump. So let's go all the way back in time. Let's go all the way back to the very first Bitcoin halving, November 2012. All right, if we go in here and we see this was the first halving, this line here, this was the first supply shock event. And yes, of course, Bitcoin pumped afterwards, as it should, theoretically, because of the supply going down, the inflation rate of Bitcoin decreasing. But it only took 44 days. 44 days. That's a month and a half after the halving for it to have an epic run up from $10 all the way to over $1,000, right? That was the China bubble. Then on the second cycle, the second halving, okay, July 2016, it then took 113 days after the halving for Bitcoin to make a new all-time high and to start its run. Now, yes, this is subjective, okay? This is very subjective, so people are going to say different things. And when people say Bitcoin always pumps 200 days after the halving, the caveat here that you'll see is that yes, it pumps within 200 days, but in the earlier cycles, it actually pumped much lower than 200 days. So remember, cycle 1, 43 days, cycle 2, 113 days. Less than 200, right, before it started really going parabolic. Some people call it the banana zone, right? It's shaped like a banana. Let's go to cycle 3. And in cycle 3, we can see that roughly, again, this is subjective. This is me just drawing lines on a chart, estimating that it took about 150 days before Bitcoin started to actually go parabolic in cycle 3. All right? And now here we are in cycle 4. It's already been about 150 days. And a lot of people are suspecting that maybe it's going to take up to, 200 days before we really start going parabolic. But what do you notice about every cycle? Right? What do you notice about every halving period? It takes longer and longer. 40 days, 100 days, 150 days. Now we're looking at maybe 200 days. And if you look at the yellow bar too, this yellow bar is the date that the Bitcoin ETF launched. We can also see there's a lag time between the date of the Bitcoin ETF launching 30 days later before it actually caused a pump due to the ETF inflows. What if this is the same with Ethereum? Ethereum ETFs launched about 45, 50 days ago. Maybe it's going to take a little longer because maybe things are taking longer this time to play out, because maybe this time really is different. And why would I say this time is different? Well, again, we all want to be absolutely certain about this 4-year cycle, and some people, I think, give too much importance to this. Some people hold on to the 4-year cycle as if it's just like a mathematical fact. This time really is different, and I'll tell you why. Crypto has never existed in a quantitative tightening environment. What does that mean? Guys, Bitcoin was created in 2009 rather, as a response to the 2008 housing crisis. All right, the corruption of the banks and Wall Street being bailed out by the taxpayers. Bitcoin was a direct response to that. Even in the very first Bitcoin block, you could see encoded in that block is a newspaper about the UK government bailing out the banks, which was an outrage. Remember there were protests, Occupy Wall Street. And as time went on, money is easier and easier to get. So after the 2009 housing crisis, the Federal Reserve lowered the interest rates, the federal funds rate, to 0%. And what does that mean? It means money is easy to get. It means the rate that the banks pay to borrow funny money from the Fed, magic made-up monopoly money, they don't even have to pay anything. They don't have to pay anything on those loans that they get. They can just get money from the Fed, and they get to pay 0% interest on their debt. So they can give away credit, they can give away money to people, and that inflates all the assets. That's what's been happening over the last 14 years up until this very point. Even during COVID, right? COVID, we saw a big crash, but to combat that, they literally doubled the money supply. They printed more money so much that it doubled the entire money supply in a 2-year span. So, 250 years of money supply was doubled in the next 2 years. It's insane. They also lowered the Federal Reserve requirements to 0%, meaning the banks don't actually have to hold any money at the banks anymore. So we're just in this crazy environment right now, and something's got to give. And for the first time, we've had a recession, we've had negative GDP growth for 2 quarters in a row. We've had quantitative tightening. We've had the Federal Reserve finally raise interest rates for the first time in 16 years, 15 years. So now Federal Reserve rates are not at 0, but they're at 5%, 5.5%. And we're finally at the cusp where global liquidity is going to rise again, and the Federal Reserve is going to cut interest rates again. Plus, you've got election season and all the global liquidity. So you could say there's bullish times ahead. But historically, we've never had Bitcoin taking this long. We've never had Ethereum taking this long to make new all-time highs. Ethereum is younger than Bitcoin, but in its past 2 cycles, it's always made a new high by now. This time it hasn't. It's been 3.5 years. So you could say that maybe lengthening cycles are going to be what's happening this time. Maybe this time is different. All right, it doesn't change the fact that there's bullish, optimistic things around the corner. It doesn't change the fact that more and more people are using crypto every single day, that technology is going to eat the world, and that eventually governments are going to be forced, if they want to compete, to be friendly to crypto regulation. So the only point I want to leave you here with is don't get obsessed with the idea of the 4-year cycle. The thesis is simple. The money printer will go burr once again. Crypto's never had to exist in a QT environment, and that's okay. They call this the turkey problem. This is from Nassim Taleb's book about the black swan events, right? Black swan events are unpredictable, and in that book he talks about the turkey problem, right? Consider a turkey that is fed every single day, and that starts to form the bird's belief that they're going to get fed every single day, reliably and predictably. They're going to tell themselves that the farmer is looking out for the turkey's best interest. Until one fateful day on Thanksgiving dinner, the turkey gets its head chopped off, and the turkey dies. So this is also the philosophical problem of induction, right? This is all we have to do. All we have to do is induce the truth, but you can never actually prove that this is the truth. So we look to the past to predict the future, and that's all we can do. But these predictions, they can't be proven true. They can only be proven false, right? And when we talk about the Bitcoin cycles, we've only got 4 cycles, guys. We've only got 4 data points to work off of. Now you could say, yes, if everybody does believe the same thing, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You could say that if everyone believes in a 4-year cycle, then they're going to, subconsciously, they're going to make it happen. Sometimes we even see this in TA, right? Technical analysis. If everybody's drawing the same lines on the chart, everyone's drawing the same triangle, the traders and the markets, they actually just end up making it happen. That's what a self-fulfilling prophecy is. If everyone believes the same story, whether or not it's a fictional story, it might happen. But you can already see here on the Bitcoin chart that it's taking longer and longer post-halvening. It's already at almost 150 days, and Bitcoin hasn't really had an epic run-up yet. Even the ETF, it only pumped Bitcoin from 45K to 70K. That's like a 50% gain. That's really not life-changing money in crypto. The 4-year cycle, essentially it works like clockwork until the one day it doesn't, until the one day the turkey gets its head chopped off. So long story short, guys, it almost doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where we're at in this cycle. It doesn't matter if the cycle is not playing out exactly on a 4-year time span. Logically, it makes sense to me that it would take longer because as crypto matures, it takes more time for people to get in. Again, quantitative tightening needs to turn back into quantitative easing. And fingers crossed, come election season, they're going to rotate some people out. Maybe Gary Gensler gets fired. Maybe better regulations come to the US for crypto. So keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't get religiously tied to this belief in the 4-year cycle. because clearly things aren't playing out in the right way. And that might be confusing or concerning for some people, but it doesn't change the fundamental thesis. Daddy Jerome Powell and bad girl Yellen at the Federal Reserve. They shall print more money one day. And in the words of a YouTuber named Dollar Cost Crypto, blessed be thy bags, for they shall pump. We're all going to make it, guys. Hope you learned something in this video. Food for thought. Like, subscribe, comment, share the video. And if you're brand new to crypto, if nothing I said made any sense, check out the links below. They give you everything you need to get started. Check out my course. It'll teach you everything you need. Hold your hand from zero to hero. Or if you just want to know how to get involved in some of the more up-and-coming investments that I like, the Pulse Chain ecosystem, Hex, PulseX, INC, all these different tokens that have massively more potential than Bitcoin and massively more potential than Ethereum. If you want to get on board, if you want to buy those tokens and set up accounts and wallets, check out these links in the description below. Open the description, read the links, and learn about the opportunity of a lifetime before it's too late. See you on the next one.